feel like I'm the artistic Christian Armanpour.
Okay, we're here. This is The Art of Living on ThinkTech on Friday at 2 p.m. That's because The Art of Living is always here on Friday at 2 p.m. with Willow Chang. No matter where she goes, we are always following her. We find our way electronically to capture her and make her part of this show on Friday at 2 p.m., The Art of Living, here on the ThinkTech series. And if you didn't know, Willow Chang runs a show called The Art of Living because she is a bon vivant. A bon vivant and a host. Some people call her a host bon vivant. That's the French version of it, I suppose. And we're entitling this episode, Yoga Dance is Alive in Kauai. And that's because, actually, Willow is in Kauai at a dance conference in Kauai. Welcome to your own show, Willow. Hi.
Aloha.
Tell us, what kind of a dance conference is going on in Kauai that would take you to Kauai on a Friday at 2 p.m.?
I'll tell you, this is something that I have wanted to do for a very long time. So I'm at an event that is hosted by Janice Craig, and she has a company called Aloha Namaste. And she lives in Hawaii, but she's traveled to India various times to study with gurus of different spiritual and meditative practices and disciplines. And she is sponsoring Polina Shakti, who I've also studied classical Indian dance with when she has come to Hawaii and was part of my puja concert. So Polina, just to break it down, she spends half of her year in India. She lives in Rajasthan, and then the other half of the year she travels internationally to conduct these various workshops and intensives. She had one this year in June, and I saw that and I thought, oh, I have to go. It's in Berkeley, like it's not that hard. But I couldn't make it because I had to save up to go to a Bollywood event that I was invited to in Athens in Greece, right? Like
Choices.
Then they announced another one in Colorado. Choices, and I thought, Colorado, I can do that. But reality is I am a wuss. I don't fare well in Colorado. I've been to Colorado twice, and the altitude makes me very sleepy, which isn't bad because my cousin said it could also give you flatulence. So I figured, sleepy or flatulence, I figure I'm coming out ahead. But for a dance retreat, it's not good to be sleepy if you have physical demands.
You're on ThinkTech.
Yes.
These are the truths by which we live.
These are the truths. And then this event made itself known, and it's here on the beautiful Garden Island, and Polina is teaching both yoga and classical Odissi dance, and it's September 4th through 10th, and my goodness, I'm getting my butt whooped.
Well, okay, so let's step through that one step at a time.
Okay.
What kind of dance is this now? Classical dance? What exactly is it?
Okay. First of all, my first choice would to have Polina speak on her behalf, being the guru and being the expert. However, she has a documentarian here, and they are using this break time to work on their project. So regrets in that field.
In turn, she will learn to forgive herself for not appearing on the show.
We'll get her next time. Classical Indian dance covers, depending on who's defining it, is anywhere from 5 to 8 art forms. And Odissi is the classical Indian dance form from Odisha. And each of these forms, whether it's Bharatnatyam or Kuchipudi, both of which I've studied, Kathak, Kathakali, Odissi, and so forth, have different approaches to how they interpret the music, the type of storytelling, the type of movements, the gestures, the costuming, etc., as would be expected. With the Odissi dance, it has a shared origins in the sense that it's a temple dance. So this means that the original purpose of dance in India was sacred and ritual. It was performed in the temples as a means to disseminate information and spiritual practice to people. A lot of people will reference the Devadasi system, and the Devadasi would be a daughter who would be gifted to the temple, and she would spend her time learning the sacred arts, slokas, different types of ragas, different stepping patterns, different dances.
So these dances are essentially out of religion, or did they emerge out of some spiritual belief, or what?
Absolutely. So the dancer serves as a conduit between the common person and the religious spirit. So coming from a hula background, to me, I feel like that this really, it resonates in a similar place because hula has its origins as a sacred dance as well. It's a narrative dance form. There are styles within Indian dance that are not narrative, that are what they would call pure dance, nitra, and that's interpreting the music and something that's beautiful for the sake of being beautiful. But a majority of the dances have a narrative form, and they then share either stories from the Ramayana or Vedic scripture and texts, and things that are very profound. But even though they might sound heavy, they're very entertaining. So if you have any familiarity with Greek mythology, even though they're gods, they're pretty interesting stories, and that can be said of Vedic culture as well.
So is it like hula in the sense that your hands tell the story?
Your hands definitely tell the story. So one of the components that's very distinctive with all forms of classical dance is the use of a mudra. And a mudra is a hand gesture, and there's a whole lexicon and cataloged movements of these mudras that are given names. So this is something that fascinates me about Indian dance, is that the nomenclature and the classification of the dance is from generations and thousands of years ago. So there was a book called the Natra Shastra that was written, and this is basically an instruction manual or a user's guide expressing all of these very specific, clear movements, intentions, dress, grooming, stepping patterns, etc. So for mudras, even though the context might change, the hand gestures are the same. So the most basic mudra that people learn when they're learning dance, the first one would be pataka. And pataka is a flag. There's three pataka, part of the flag, part of the pataka. Katakamuta.
I can't do that. Yeah. I'm not able to do that.
Oh, really? Okay. You might be able to do this one. This one is Ala Padma. This is an open lotus. Right? Mushti.
You need a light in front of your hand so you can cast a silhouette on the screen behind you.
Suchi, which is the needle. This one you'll see a lot with the head side. Oh no, you didn't.
Yes.
Right? So it's fascinating. And then there are single hand mudras and there's double hand mudras. So your mudras may not only be one hand, you have to have dexterity, clearness in the movement and intention in both hands. If you are mildly dyslexic, thank you, this dance will kick your butt. But if you're sick like me, you actually enjoy it. I really, really enjoy the mental, the physical, and the spiritual challenge that Indian dance, for me, makes me feel.
I'm wondering if the elements in the Indian dance that you're studying now, you know, whether they are things that you would incorporate into your own non-Indian dance, you know? In other words, if you were just dancing free form, some of these moves look like they would be really interesting to use in Indian, non-Indian dancing.
I couldn't agree more, and I've actually done things when I was a student at UH and I got my degree in dance. I actually did a piece in Footholds that used mudras. Now, there was a faculty advisor there who didn't really relate to that and didn't understand the purpose or significance. So herein lies the rub. When you're doing something and your purpose is to communicate, if you don't have a shared understanding of what it is you're trying to say, it might be lost on others. For me as an artist, even though I respect and understand I'm supposed to communicate, I feel like it's important to allow the audience a chance to come to their own understanding and their own ability to appreciate something. I feel like it oversteps the bounds to tell people what they're supposed to feel or think. However, with something like Indian dance, this is where it's very different, because the idea and the concept of rasa, of feeling, my responsibility as a dancer is to know what the feeling is, to embody the feeling, to transmit the feeling, which in part the audience can then feel that same emotion. So if I'm supposed to be angry and communicate anger in the storyline, the audience is supposed to feel anger also. And only when that transmission happens would a dancer be considered successful? I'll use some finger quotes, or perhaps that they have achieved the purpose of which they're performing or sharing dance. So there's these interesting different kind of counterpoints of philosophy in terms of art and presentation that I think every artist, and in the end we're all artistic in our own way, we need to have these things to kind of bounce ideas off and challenge our own concepts and preconceived notions of what is an artistic process and what is being communicative or creative, and what is honoring tradition, and what in turn becomes something unique and innovative.
We need to study that. I mean, there's spiritual communication, honor of some historical notion in the story. But let me ask you first, what about costumes? Are costumes an essential part of this yoga dance? Do you have to, should you wear certain kinds of clothes when you dance the dance?
Absolutely. And so a lot of the general rule of thumb is that the Indian culture is one that values modesty. And by modesty, the idea is that you want to keep essentially your private part of your body private and not on display. And you don't want to encourage or evoke temptation or desire. You know, you just want to be appropriate in all situations. And so in a dance setting, there's two functions. One is you want to show respect for the guru and the setting and honor the tradition of the dance. But you also need to be able to wear things that are functional, right? And that wonderful function needs form. So just because someone enjoys wearing hot pants and a crop top doesn't mean that that would necessarily be appropriate for an Indian dance class. So in class, you'll see a wide array of clothing that's considered optional in terms of your choices, because we are here in the United States. So you might see leggings, long t-shirts or tunics, scarves tied, you can't see it, but wrapped at the torso to cover the midsection, cholis, which are small fitted tops. Some people wear sari in class, and there's many ways that you can wrap sari, which is basically about 9 yards of fabric. So there are options, and then as you might see, I have on a bindi. So a lot of people are familiar, they make this association with Indian culture or Hindu culture, and I actually have two because I was blessed by my guru. So
you seem to have a red mark on your forehead.
Yes, that was actually given to me with the kumkum powder. So the traditional old-fashioned way is that you would have a red vermilion powder, which you would then have, you'd either place it on yourself or someone would give it to you in a blessing or a welcoming. So Janice gave this bindi to me. She marked me this morning, early this morning. This is one that I brought on my own. And the bindi once served the purpose of being a sign of a woman's marital status. So originally it was worn by women who were married. In today's society, it's worn for many reasons. You could be single, married, widowed, what have you. It's a fashion statement. It has loosened up its sumptuary laws. That's your $10 word for today. So sumptuary law sumptuary. These are concerns of clothing and rules and guidelines, either dictated by a society or government or a higher authority, what is appropriate that you can wear. So an example is many generations ago in Europe, only royalty could wear purple. And the reason for that is that it was hard to get purple dye because they were made out of these snails that lived off the Mediterranean. I'm not making this up. You can Google this.
We accept that.
Or like ermine. You know, you always see royalty in Europe wearing these ermine furs, or peacock feathers in Hawaii. They created a superstition because they wanted peacock feathers for the ali'i. So there's these different types of rules. The third eye corresponds with the chakra. So the idea is that chakras are different energy sources that align up within the body, and that the third eye is your highest self and your ability to have spiritual clarity and wisdom. And you can do things to maintain that stability and that wisdom. And so this is what it corresponds with. I know that's a long answer.
No, I feel the spiritual clarity right now, and the clarity is telling me that we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
Sometimes that's what the message is. We're going to take just a minute break here at Willow. That's Willow Chang, bon vivant and host, and we're talking in the art of living, and we're talking with Willow in Kauai, where the name of our episode is Yoga Dance is Alive and Well in Kauai. We'll be right back to learn more from Willow Chang. Aloha, this is Jay Fidell. You know, ThinkTech and the Hawaii Venture Capital Association put on monthly luncheon panel programs at the Plaza Club here in Pioneer Plaza. Our program this time is on September 26th. It's called Solar in Hawaii. We're going to examine the solar industry and see what's in it for the long haul. We have a great panel, great moderator. We'll be sending out email on this. If you want to be in our email list to receive the details, check out thinktechhawaii.com. In any event, you can sign up for the program at hvca.org. Thanks. See you there. This is Jay Fidell. Mahalo. Hi, I'm Jay Fidell. Yes, this is ThinkTech, broadcasting on Ustream and Spreaker both day and night, doing its thing on OC16 and Olelo, and uploading videos all over YouTube. Check us out and see the links on thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo. This is ThinkTech, here on a Friday at 2 p.m. It's the Willow Chang Show. Willow Chang, bon vivant and host. And today we're talking to Willow in Kauai on the art of living. That's the name of her show at 2 p.m. every Friday. And our subject is yoga dance. Yoga dance is alive and well in Kauai. And in the break, Willow and I were talking about what this means in the world of a person who is committed to dance, who studied dance, and who goes and looks for dance. It's a sort of a collection of many dances. So can you give us the sort of the intellectual container for all these dances? You were actually out there looking for yet another dance when you go to Kauai to put it in your repertory. Am I right? How does that work?
Well, I would have to say, as many people, I'm definitely a product of my environment. So how I would define that is growing up in Hawaii, which is a very multicultural place. We have a lot of different influences, and I've benefited from that experience. I'm also the product of a biracial marriage, right? So I had the classic East and West represented in my upbringing at home. And I've always loved music and dance, and I was fortunate enough to start at a young age, which doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, but the most important thing you hope for as a student, as a teacher, as a parent, whatever, is that it plants seeds of respect and wonder and awe, and hopefully something takes and you really enjoy it. Maybe you gain rhythm, gain confidence, you have grace or strength. It might be the crossroads where you start with one activity and you launch into another. So maybe you study flamenco and you decide you want to learn Spanish. You learn Spanish, you go to Spain. You go to Spain and you're like, hey, I want to I want to be a matador. I want to learn how to be a sommelier. It's how are we to know where the journey leads us? I just know that for me, dance has been something continual that has opened many doors, whether it was living in Egypt and dancing hula or coming to Kauai to further my studies in classical Indian dance.
So it's a study is the point, and I guess you're open to any possibility around the world. You have an infinite oyster here. You could find a dance in Tibet that interests you, you'd go to Tibet. It costs money to go to Tibet, but you try anyway. And you could find a kazatska in Russia, you go there, and you could learn all these things, right?
Well, I've been really lucky because there's a lot of dance forms right in the heart of Hawaii. So I was mentioning to you, I'm pretty much a bone dance addict. That's not going to surprise any of my friends. Every summer, every weekend, I'm at some temple doing bone dance, and I absolutely enjoy that. So I don't have to go somewhere other than my own backyard. I learned Argentine tango right in Hawaii with George Garcia, who's my guru, and I hope to have him on the show. Mm-hmm. But what's so interesting is that when you take a study or a discipline and you invest in it, it opens up your world exponentially. So by studying Argentine tango in Honolulu, when I travel, I'm able to go and connect and drop into other tango communities or comunidades I've danced tango in Zurich and in Berlin and in San Francisco. And I can meet other tango people and have someone cool to hang out with. Just like if you were a Star Trek person, you could drop into
I can't do that
a Star
either.
Trek convention, right? That's a mudra.
Yeah, okay.
Star Trek mudra, live long and prosper. Which I heard has origins within the Jewish faith. I will Google this and let your viewers know about it.
Yes, please.
But people have speculated that this has more than just Gene Roddenberry into the mix.
Okay.
But that's the thing that I think that's so fascinating, is that music, dance, the body, it is a universal language in the sense that we might express ourselves differently, but the essence and the core of it, those elements are going to remain the same. So if I were to liken it to water, I'm going to give you Bruce Lee, be water, my friend. But if you think of dance as water, when water is steam, or it's vapor, or it's snow, or it's rain, or it's an ocean or a stream, these are all various sources of water, different forms. But the reality is, the essence of it is it's still water. And that's something that motivates me as a teacher and as a student, is like when I'm learning different styles of dance, if I'm learning different styles of music, or even language, because I think that those are all interchangeable to some degree, what is the essence? It's when you try to study and understand the Venn diagram of where does it overlap and where is it different, you can then celebrate the differences and you can celebrate the similarities. It can actually strengthen your ability to teach and share with other people if you expand your horizons. I understand this idea that you put blinders on and you study one thing your whole life. If you want to only study judo and you want to become a master, that might be essential. But if you want to study multiple forms of martial arts to understand how they're different and how they're similar, it's essential for you to get out of just only being on one path. That's just my opinion.
Well, but I think that you touch on a very important point. You know, so much of what we do in our lives is purely intellectual. But dance connects us with the environment. It's physical at the end. And so we're taking an intellectual process and putting it through kind of a physical filter, a lens of the physical activity of the human body. And then we have dance connecting the environment and the intellect. No?
It is, and if you were to think of dance like language, which it is, let's use English because I'm assuming our audience is predominantly English speaking. English that's spoken in America, which is very diverse as it is going to differ than English that's spoken in the UK. And there's various parts of the UK, or by a Kiwi from New Zealand, or someone, there's a rooster, or someone in Australia. The same can be said of something like within the realm of classical Indian dance. So if you have 8 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, different dance forms will interpret how can you dance 8 steps. And that's the thing. My brain and my ears are like, they're smoking, because earlier this year I was studying Bharatanatyam, now shifted back to Odissi. The way that they would count and dance 4 is different in each style. So it's like I'm forcing my synapses to like retrain. You're basically training your brain. This is the healthiest way that you can improve yourself, is to keep constantly exposing yourself to new things. And sometimes as you get older, that probably feels like the least comfortable thing you want to do. You can get stuck in your ways. You can become a creature of habit. You might want to eat a grilled cheese sandwich every single day, but that's definitely what you don't want to do. You want to keep exposing yourself to new things. No one is suggesting you have to be a master.
Well, now here's the problem. I mean, you're trained. You went to school. You got a degree in this. You've studied, a zillion different kinds of dances.
I'm still getting my butt whooped.
What about people who don't have that training, that skill? How do they enjoy it? Are they relegated to being spectators? Or can they also do what you're doing?
I'm going to let you in on a secret. We have 2 women at this retreat who have never done any dance at all. Now, I don't know if they realize how hard they set the bar for themselves. I completely respect them. But my experience watching students and teaching students is that sometimes people who have what they call no experience have an easier time because they don't have to contend with unlearning what they've learned before. So it's a coin toss. Sometimes it helps you, sometimes it doesn't. It's different for every single person. I've seen people who've never done any dance and they just click with something and they're really, really good at it. And you just make the assumption, you're like, oh, you've probably been doing dance your whole life. And they're like, no, I just started 2 years ago. I just really practice and I come to class. Like, oh, you know, and meanwhile you have somebody who's done ballet the whole life and they're dying. I mean, it happens. So that's the thing I think that's so fascinating, is that the preconceived notions that we all have, myself included, they are really put to task when you go and try something different. Even if it's stand-up paddleboarding or go to a dance class or a language class, and there's so many parts of your brain that you're engaging, right? There's recall, there's short-term memory, there's muscle memory, there's your ability to focus in the moment. There's the ability to just shut off that voice in your head that's like being judgmental, like, God, I suck, oh, this is really hard, it's really hot today, do I have to like return an email? You have to leave. If you have any of that stuff going on in your mind in class, it's like the quickest way to failure.
Well, what are the classes like? I mean, let's take the classes that you teach customarily. Do you have a lot of people? Do they dance in a group? Do they dance individually? You know, what's the best way to teach? What's the best way to enjoy the experience?
Wow. There are as many approaches to this as there are roads to Rome, and that's pretty cliche, but it's true. For myself, I have different kinds of students from all walks of life, but I would say they have two things in common, in my opinion, and I have analyzed this because I like to do that. One is I find that they're self-starters. So they're self-starters and they're curious about the world. They have a tendency to read for pleasure, they like to travel, and they just have intellectual curiosity. And I think every teacher loves students like this, because it makes our job infinitely easier and it's easy to engage them in a learning situation. The second thing that they have in common is they have a good sense of humor, and if they don't, they need to, because they're welcome to laugh at me and my really bad jokes. And also I think your learning process is aided by being able to laugh at yourself. If you can't laugh at yourself and you're so incredibly serious, you are just by choice making things harder.
And you can't be a good dancer.
You have to laugh. I mean, I say dance is the ultimate exercise in humility, and there are times when you just feel like you don't know what the heck you're doing, but you know that somewhere in some place it probably looks really good. So, you know, that's why when at the bone dance, I'm on the outside of the circle because I'm using like the side eye and I'm checking out what the people in the center, neither the yogura, are doing, because they know what they're doing.
You know, this all reminds me of, God, I wish we could see your dance here today. There'll have to be another time for that. Can we see you dance? Can you step back and give us some moves?
I'm infinitely sweatier when we're stepping. I mean, you would be amazed how it gets the heart rate up and how you bust a sweat by stomping the ground. And you have these sustained stomps on the ground called jatis, these rhythmic patterns, and you have to, with Odissi, the classical Indian dance form, it's a very low bent knee, kind of like ancient Kahiko hula. So if you've ever seen Ray Monarch and they're really low to the ground, that's the same kind of feel, and it is a killer on your quadriceps. Like, at the end of the day, you're just kind of wobbling to the dinner table, and your legs feel like rubber bands, and you're like, oh my God, I paid for this. I'm sick.
You know, they say that that being an actor in the theater, and we have you know, some experience with that with Donna Blanchard, because she does the arts in Hawaii on Wednesdays, and she's, if you haven't met her, she's a really nice person. But if you study to be an actor, it changes the way you conduct yourself in your daily life. And my question to you, Willow, is if you study to be a dancer, does that also change the way you conduct yourself in your daily life?
I think so, because what it does is it gives you an awareness of not only your body, but it helps bring into focus that the choices that we make every day are then affected, they affect the results that we have in life. I mean, that sounds pretty basic, but it's so important. So the food that you eat, the way you sit in a chair, you know, the shoes that you choose to wear, the posture you hold when you're brushing your teeth. I mean, it sounds like your mom, but every 25 years. But in general, I don't really value things that are artificial. I can enjoy camp, and I can enjoy things that are of 21st century, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the pursuit of what is genuine. And when every person is on that trajectory and on that path of seeking what is genuine to themselves, that's when things change. And I think that's what dance helps you do, is find what is genuine for yourself.
Well, this is pretty serious thinking, and I wonder if when you go on these, you know, missions to learn dances, maybe that, you know, are not part of your existing repertory, or to expand your knowledge of those dances, you're also expanding your own understanding of dancing. In other words, your reason for being in Kauai is not limited to just learning the yoga dance from the guru. It's also to expand your own personal consciousness. Am I right?
It's that, and it's so many things. It helps me as a teacher. It reminds me the humility of being an eternal student. You know, so when I have students in my class and they're feeling a level of frustration or insecurity, I know exactly what that is because I'm feeling it today and every day, and I'm trying to find ways to cope with it. I'm sharpening my mental saw and my sacred saw, but I'm also I'm trying to come from a foundation of respecting Indian dance, which then supports my Bollywood. So Bollywood is the dance and art form that you see in the Indian film industry, right, with their musicals.
Sure.
And it kind of is anything goes. It's become anything but the kitchen sink, and it's really open to trends and the whims of the choreographer or what the story of the movie line is about. However, there are components of Bollywood which I personally relate to, and I feel that's essential to respect that tradition of having Indian dance. So if you see great movies like Devadasi or Umrao or I'm drawing a blank right now, Jodha Akbar, when you have historical costume dramas set in India, whether it's Lucknow or you're a temple dancer, they will use these classical Indian forms or even folkloric forms, mudras, stepping patterns. So I feel like when I'm doing Bollywood, my goal as a teacher and a choreographer, performers, I want to bring in elements from India to honor the rich traditions and culture of India. Mm-hmm. I don't just want to make up any old thing because I can. I want to find a way to always connect it to India. So for me, studying a foundation from a classical background is a nice way to pay homage to that.
What about the music, Willow? What kind of music do you have in the conference here in Kauai? With the guru, what kind of music would be appropriate? Because I remember in what was that big Indian movie, the Bollywood movie that was so popular a couple of years ago?
I know which one you're speaking of, but it's technically not a Bollywood movie. It was Slumdog Millionaire.
Yes, right. Slumdog.
Not a Bollywood movie. It was Danny Boyle. Danny Boyle is English director, sorry.
Anyway, so my question though is, what kind of music is appropriate for the classical dance that you're learning right now?
Classical dance will most definitely require classical music, and that would include the slokas. They tell you the story before the story per se, using the various ragas, which are the set scales, using the different rhythms that can be either played on drum and also danced on the feet with the jatis, that rhythmic footwork, which can be exceptionally complex. In a word, everything about classical Indian dance and music is complex. There's just no way to sugarcoat it. It is a very complex, rich, complicated, challenging art form. But here in life,
what did you say to me before the show began? Classical dance, you can't fake. You can't fake this.
I mean, there's just there's no way. It's not like, dude, I bought this sitar and now I'm gonna like be a classical musician. It just doesn't work that way. It's so infinite and it is so challenging, and yet it's so rewarding. And for me, the thing I like about it is it's very humbling. It's very humbling. And hey, like I said, I'm a product of my environment. Hawaii is a place that values humility. My family is one that has valued humility within the right context. And I think that's really important for people. It's like you need to find your balance of when you feel comfortable, you can assert your skill set, and when you also want to bow down and say, dude, I don't know anything.
Well, you know, it sounds to me like when you're talking about classical dance, especially Indian yoga classical dance, it's largely an intellectual experience. And although it may be physically demanding, it's something that you could do way into your elder years. It's not the kind of demanding that, you know, that some of the American dancing requires, or that ballet requires, where you have a limited useful life, so to speak. If it's an intellectual classical dance, you can do it all your life, no matter how old you are. Am I right about that?
I would have to respectfully say no, in the sense that
okay.
because to some degree, if you are not in a state of training your body, the body with the natural onslaught of aging is that it can slow down, and you may not have the crispness or the swiftness that a younger body or mind can be harnessed. That doesn't mean that a person who's mature, which technically I am, you can still harness that skill set. But it is very physically demanding. For some people, they may not be able to handle the stamping. They might get shin splints, they might have osteoporosis, or it's a very, very challenging dance. And it is also very emotional, because if you have only the technique without the emotion, it's simply exercise. And I think that's true of any dance. But in classical Indian dance, it's very essential to have the feeling, the rasa, and to have the bhava, right, the emotion. You need to be able to express that, because without it, it's like, I liken it to a GMO strawberry. Really big, really red, looks awesome, and you bite into it and that sucker has no flavor. And that's what dance with only technique is, like a really great big strawberry with no flavor. You know what I mean?
I do. I know those strawberries.
I know those strawberries. They sell them at COS. Well, we won't go there. I wanted to tell you what our day is like, because you asked me, and I'm just going to read this, right?
Okay.
We start our day off at 7:30. We have a tea or a piece of fruit just to get something in your blood sugar flowing. From 8:30 to 9:30, we have yoga.
I think you've got the paper over the microphone, so we can't hear you very well.
Within the 7 to 8:30, we have yoga. And within that yoga training, we start off first with a blessing, and then we also have learned 3 different chants that evoke the gods and ask for a blessing, and also use the healing qualities of the vibration and the voice to kind of initiate the process and start the body up, per se. We do a vinyasa-based yoga, which is slower and sustained, but very challenging. So Ashtanga, which is like kind of rock and roll and hardcore, doesn't necessarily, as our guru say, serve this purpose, because the Odissi is going to be so hard and it's going to kick your butt. It's kind of repetitive to have these 2 disciplines. So we have sustained stretching, which trains the body. Then we have about 20 minutes to eat some breakfast. Everything here is non-GMO. It's all organic. We have an amazing chef who cooks for us. I have not had anything with gluten in it for 2 days, and man, I feel amazing. It's amazing how different your body feels. It's like, whoo, goodbye zippies. And then from 10 to 12, we do our exercises and our stepping practices, and we go through the basic forms of choka, which is a very square shape body form with all of these various stepping patterns. Now, stepping patterns just tend to the rhythmic component in the feet, but there's what you're doing with your torso, and there's the mudras with the hands, and then there's the movement of the head, and there's the movement of the eyes. there's a million things going on, and it's all very specific.
What's interesting is the expert who teaches you, your guru. What was the name of your Colina?
Colina Shakti.
Yes, she's actually from California.
She is from California. She has brought them into the fold and given them gainful employment. She has made efforts to make sure that the antique silver in Rajasthan, which was being melted down for money purposes, she would buy the silver from the village women, and she sells them to an audience who appreciates the craftsmanship that would have just been melted down. She has learned the dances of the gypsies of the Kabelia, which are the nomadic gypsies in Rajasthan, and she employs these women to come and also teach in her school. She has done documentary work and she's worked with photographers, and she has really helped place a value and importance on these classical and folkloric art forms of India, regardless that she's not Indian. I am convinced she has an Indian soul, and she is a scholar and an artist and a visionary. And
all I have the things you want from this class.
She is an amazing woman. I have such incredible respect for her, and she has respect in so many various circles worldwide. She is a gem, and we're so honored to have her here in Hawaii. I mean,
yeah. Well, let me ask, last question before we have to go is, what's your plan for continuing your studies? Either in Oahu, in Kauai? You mentioned you were going to Germany. What does it look like from this point forward, Willow?
You know, I mean, realistically, I foresee myself doing self-practice, which is not very sexy, and it lacks community, and it lacks the joy of having your guru. But unfortunately, in Hawaii, we have not had the ability to retain classical Indian dance teachers for any length of time. Colina does a workshop in India. It's always been my goal. My goal is like, I want to go and do her month-long retreat while my knees are still functioning. It's just, for most people, it can be a challenge to just take off for a month. I mean, in my mind, 1 month is like 2, because there's all of these variables that you have to contend with. And I would love to do that. I'm not sure if it's in my future. I will be going to Germany at the end of the year to go teach in a Oriental dance festival with Leila Giovanna, and hopefully I'll be Skyping with you guys then. But what I plan to do is just keep my yoga practice in check and do self-practice with the stepping patterns, and reach out to other practitioners of Indian dance in Honolulu and see if we can form a group of some sort to help each other stay on the path.
That's great, Willow. Willow Chang, bon vivant and host in The Art of Living, our 2 p.m. every Friday show, talking about yoga dance, how it's alive and well in Kauai. Thank you so much, Willow. I hope to see you when you come back this week. In any event, I'll see you, Friday, right? Next Friday.
Exactly.
Looking forward.
And I'm looking forward to your air conditioning. It's hot here.
It's great to be on Skype, though.
It is.
Aloha, Willow. Thanks.
Bye.
See you next week.
Namaste.
Namaste.